When Mrs. Drummond told everyone to evacuate the bus, my heart started to race. Someone said that it was a twister, which made me super nervous because I started to miss my mom and dad. I made sure I grabbed my backpack with Mike's old book in it and my cell phone. Then, when I got off the bus, I yelled to my friend Jillian to figure out where everyone was. Her voice was faint, but I heard her say that they were under the overpass. There was so much wind and rain, and within seconds, there was rushing water on the highway. When I got off the bus, the storm was so harsh that the sky was black, and I was heading to the right to meet my classmates. I ended up tripping and falling into the drainage ditch. Since there was flooding, the rushing water swept me farther away from everyone, and a flash of lightning struck me in my leg, and then my life was changed forever. I think this twister occurred as a sign to show and teach me about my heritage. Going back in time and learning about my ancestors by actually meeting some of them gave me closure to my identity and made me proud to be Native American. Well, even though she wore a long granny dress and apron, I thought Prue was pretty. My first encounter with her was during an earthquake where Prue and I helped evacuate her mom on a blanket. She first asked me if I was Indian, and I'm not quite sure why that even mattered. She told me her name was Prudence Charity, but that was too long, so I just called her Prue. She also ate venison, which I learned was deer meat, and that really grossed me out. I was also really confused on why they didn't have flashlights, but I just went along with it. When I went into their cabin, I found it odd how they had an ash bucket but didn't have electricity. It was so different from any other house that I had ever seen. But none of that really mattered because we were in complete distress over this storm and we ended up huddling together watching the world go to pieces around us. Honestly, living without a cell phone and technology was terrible. I felt so helpless not being able to contact my parents to let them know where I was, or the police to help me. All I wanted was to call someone to save me and get me back home, but I couldn't. I also didn't realize how much technology I used daily, even for simple things like transportation. Since cars had yet to be invented, we walked everywhere, and man, was that brutal. But I could probably now make the track team. I was getting frustrated with Prue because all I wanted was to use a phone to call and get us help, but she had no idea what I was talking about. I'd asked her if she was living in the Dark Ages because of her lack of knowing what a phone was, and she responded that the Dark Ages were hundreds of years ago, and that it was 1811. I thought I was being punked, honestly, because she said how the president was James Madison and there were only 17 states in the Union. But I didn't truly believe it until I looked up in the sky and saw the same comet that I had been watching at home for months, and how the scientists on the news said that it had actually first appeared in 1811. The most interesting event that I experienced is hands down delivering Grace's twins. I'd wish that my mom was there to help calm everyone down, but she wasn't, so we just had to saddle up and help Grace. I only knew how to handle the situation because I had seen a lot of women in labor under my mother's watch. I was so relieved that both Grace and the baby were okay, but when I felt Mrs. Keeler's stomach, it wasn't soft like I anticipated, and surprise, there was another baby in there that needed to be birthed. It was definitely an interesting experience, but I'm just glad that I was there and able to help Mrs. Keeler. Our relationship started off as something that seemed temporary. I was just trying to use her to help her get me out of there and go back home. But along the journey, Prue became a really good friend and even reminded me of Jillian a little bit when she offered me a scrap of cloth to wipe my mouth with after I found out she was going to wring that duck's neck. But I got pretty close with Prue, and it was really difficult leaving her because of the bond we had formed through the struggles that we had gone through together. Then it all came out when I made it back home, and Saffron came and read the journal that Prue kept, and it said to tell Zoe, me obviously, that I loved her like a sister. I for sure cried tears of happiness. The journey of going back in time made me realize that I am proud to be part Native American. At the beginning, I was offended when Prue asked if I was Indian and backed it up by saying that if my grandma was Indian, then I was Indian too. I responded by letting her know that I'm nowhere full blooded and consider myself an Americana mismatch. But now, post journey, I realize how important it was to find out my family and who I came from. If Prue were here today, I would for sure tell her I told you so, because I knew someone was going to snap her up and marry her, and that's exactly what William Bradley did.